Turning to the painting again, she suddenly felt a strong desire to touch it, which was strange. She was always very careful to not touch any art unless she had a specific reason to do so. She reached her hand out to touch the door of the cottage. The instant her fingers touched the painting, she heard Graham yell, "No! Don't touch it!" Destiny heard Graham shout, but before she could move her hand away, she felt a strange sensation. The room seemed to vibrate, slight at first, and then became stronger. Her surroundings started to fade around her. She felt very dizzy and covered her face with her hands, willing the swirling to stop, and after a few moments it did. When she felt she could stand without falling over, she dropped her hands to her side and looked around in shock. She was no longer in the art gallery. Instead, she was standing on a well-kept stone path that led to a cottage a short distance away. "What happened?" she muttered to herself as she took in her surroundings. "Where am I?" The cottage looked exactly like the one in the painting she had touched just moments before. There were beautiful flower gardens all around the cottage. A large shade tree covered a section of the garden, and a small wooden bench was tucked beneath it, inviting anyone who wished to sit and relax for a while. She could hear ocean waves in the distance, and even saw a hawk soaring in the sky. "This is very strange. I must be dreaming." A faint humming drifted on the wind, which made Destiny pull her attention away from the hawk. It sounded like someone was singing. Following the sound, she walked around the cottage and saw an older woman bent over some flowers. She was humming a song Destiny wasn't familiar with. The woman was small and looked to be in her late 40s or early 50s. She had on a faded, flowered dress that hung to her ankles and strange-looking shoes. She had brown hair streaked with gray that was braided and then rolled into a bun at the nape of her neck. She had a knife in her hand and cut a few daisies and set them in a basket near her feet before moving on to cut some other flowers. A bee buzzed near her face, and she waved it away before continuing her chore. The woman must have suddenly sensed that she was no longer alone among her flowers, for she straightened and turned around. For a moment, both women stared at each other. Then the older woman grinned. "Well now, welcome. Where did you come from?" Destiny didn't answer, for she had no idea what was going on or what to tell her. She started to feel panicked, but she quickly shoved those feelings away, knowing that there must be a perfectly logical explanation. The woman set down the small knife she was using in the basket and walked toward her. "I am Mrs. Clara Moore," the woman said, introducing herself. "I'm Destiny Goodman. It's nice to meet you," Destiny said politely. The name sounded familiar to her, but her head was still swirling too much to place where she had heard it before. Mrs. Moore looked up at the sun. "It's almost time for my morning tea. Would you like to join me?" Destiny wanted to decline. She didn't make it a habit of joining strange women for tea. She actually wanted to look around and get her bearings. Her stomach growled painfully, and she found herself accepting the invitation. "That would be nice," she agreed reluctantly. "Come inside, then," Clara invited with a wave of her hand. Destiny followed her towards the small cottage. It had a thatched roof that looked sturdy and red trim around the white brick exterior. A stone path led right up to the front door, with a variety of colorful flowers bordering it. As she looked around, she suddenly realized that the cottage looked just like the one in the painting. The trees looked the same, along with the gardens that surrounded the small home, although some of the flowers were of a different variety. She couldn't see the sea that was in the painting, but she could hear the surf in the distance. For a moment she felt numb. What had just happened?